There are many different marketplaces, right? Everything ranging from the most commonly known as Amazon Seller Central, to eBay, going into Overstock, Etsy, Groupon. What other marketplaces would you classify that you know about, I would say? Does anybody want to throw out some names? Sears and Walmart.com, Newegg, Sky, and Rakuten. Okay, great. So, with all the different marketplaces, you're going to find that they all have different models, slightly different from one another. And I think that the handout on your tables is going to discuss a whole line of different marketplaces and each one of their models. I want to have Moshe and Solomon kind of join me with you guys and talk about their experience about, let's say, a specific one. So I can talk about Amazon and eBay because I do a lot of work with that. But Solomon does a lot of work with other types of marketplaces.
I put this sheet together this morning to kind of give you guys a little teaser of the different types of marketplaces that there are out there. This is about 25 or 30. There are probably dozens more. So Rafi touched on the different types of models. If you look at, you have a column with the name and then product focus, so each one has a different type of product or categories of product that they merchandise that they focus on. Then we talk about the sale type, and there's two different. One is perpetual, one is flash. Perpetual meaning that you put your products up on the site, and as long as you have inventory, you're still in business, they're still in business, they're still going to show that product. So it keeps on going perpetually. Flash is a little different, where there are timed events where they'll say, you can be up for 3 days or 4 days or a week or 1 day where your products will be up on their site. So those are two differences there. And then we're talking, the different models range from rev share, where Amazon, eBay, Rakuten, Newegg, where you put your products up, they take a percentage of your revenue. So they take a share of your revenue, it's a straight percentage, and that's how they make their money. Then the other ones are mostly drop ship, meaning that you're going to settle on a wholesale cost with them on your items, and you're going to hold those goods on consignment, whether it's a flash or a perpetual, they're going to put those products up for sale. Then they'll either send you the orders that gets placed through their website in bulk. So they may say, hey, send me 100 of these and 200 of these and 100 of these, and you send them a bulk shipment. Or they'll send you each customer name and address with the items that they ordered, and that's what I'm referring to as direct. So some say direct drop ship and some say bulk drop ship. I think that's generally how you can understand the sheet. I don't know, Sal, you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I think if I were to look at this, obviously all of them have their own specific niches and focuses and what makes them different and how they tell their own customers why they're different, whether it be out in the rack, being developed in Canada, to My Habit, which is part of Amazon, which we know, to Quiviz, which is like a penny auction site. All of them have different, personalities and signatures and how they sell their product, but all of them buy product generally the same. Obviously there's a difference between bulk drop ship, direct drop ship, which means direct to consumer and you ship it direct to the customer, or if it's the rev share. Ultimately, all of these guys are trying to figure out a way to make money without carrying inventory up front. The only one on here, and this is one quick note, that does need to carry inventory up front is My Habit. They won't run generally drop ship consignment because within their world they want to ship it within 1 to 2 businesses. It's kind of an Amazon thing, but these guys generally want to make money by carrying no inventory. And basically what we've done in e-commerce and how Moshe and I have grown our business in a very short time is leveraging our product focus, leveraging our inventory, leveraging our access to ability to sell direct to customer if necessary, or to bulk ship direct to the warehouse if necessary, to grow that way. So from a buyer's perspective, there's very limited risk. on their end, and if you sell, then they want more. And it's a wonderful thing when you want to sell something and you don't have enough of it. So it's a great place to really fuel your business, while sometimes a little bit harder to judge and gauge because it's based on sales that were done with the customer. Is an unbelievable way to inject some serious juice into whatever business you're doing. And what's nice about almost all of these, while Zulily and Whole Look, they have specific, whether it's mom focused or designer focused, all of them are generally expanding product category wise into, I'm sure, many of the categories that they're doing, whether it be accessories, tech, speakers, handbags, swimwear, furniture. They're all leveraging their own resources to build their business while not taking inventory risk, which is and that's been passed off to you guys with a higher growth potential and much better margins than you would if you were selling, for example, to Kmart. So there's certainly an opportunity in it.
So you mentioned Kmart, a couple of people mentioned Sears and Walmart that had the introduction. And put here, closer to the bottom, you have Commerce Hub and VendorNet, which are essentially, they're not marketplaces, but what they are technology services that you can hook into, that are hooked into other websites that are retailers' websites, like Walmart or Sears or Kmart or others.
So those are what we call aggregators, right? They aggregate data from a whole bunch of different sellers into one portal, and then that specific marketplace would just work with, let's say, that aggregator, and everything is formatted the way they need it. The product descriptions are set in a certain way. There are business rules for length of characters of SKUs, and descriptions need to be a certain amount of characters, and titles, and everything else. Everything else is already done for them, so it's a lot easier for them to integrate. And if you ever try to sell one, to get onto one of these marketplaces, they'll say, "Great, now please integrate with Commerce Hub or VendorNet or there's a whole bunch of them, right?" And you just do that, and then you'll be able to sell on that specific marketplace. But what it also offers is the ability to sell on other marketplaces that are integrated with that aggregator. So let's say if
Just to clarify, you don't automatically get on those sites.
No, you don't.
Right.
It's just a way of getting your data across into, it gives you one integration as a seller into multiple different marketplaces.
Take Commerce Hub as an example. So if I do whatever format they want me to upload into them, you're saying that gives me the ability, not guaranteed though, to upload to 20 other sites?
To Walmart or Sears.
Whoever's affiliated with them.
But you still got to get the buyer to want it.
Just a tool.
It's just an easier way to say, I'm already on Commerce Hub, the goods are available there.
Right. So I want to poll the audience a second. Can you guys give me an idea of what product categories you guys fit into? So I recognize some faces here, right? So I can tell some people sell electronics. How many people in the crowd sell electronic or tech-related items on marketplaces? Just by show of hands. Okay. So let's get into the other categories. How many people are in the apparel space? Let's say, not apparel accessories, but just apparel itself. And in the accessory space, let's say apparel accessories. What other categories do you guys fit into? Just want to spin it out. Home decor.
HBA.
Housewares.
HBA.
Sorry?
HBA.
HBA.
Jewelry.
Shoes. So you can see there's a whole bunch of different product categories. So what you're going to learn tonight a lot about is secondary to what you sell, you're going to need to spice up the product, right? You're going to need to have a lot of things in place before you get onto one marketplace, right? Every marketplace has a different model, but some of them require you to handle customer service. Some of them require you to ship directly to the customer. Some of them even require you to have images that are 1,000 pixels, at least on one side with a white background, and to make sure there's no watermarks, right? So there's some prerequisites that are required to be able to be on a marketplace. So before you get onto, let's say, a marketplace, you want to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row to be able to accept, when they tell you you need to have A, B, C, and D ready, that you'll be able to do that. So do you want to get into some sort of experience that you had with, common issues that you have in marketplaces, whether it be customer service or images or whatever it is, and where you put your concentration on it? We'll pull also the audience about some of their experiences, because I know some people here are successful in marketplaces, right? So I want to be able to pull and, share with you, just let you share some things that you were successful with.
Our biggest issues have been mostly tech-related. So those are the marketplaces that we work with. We connect to them with a product feed that gives them all of our product pricing, imagery, content, descriptions, etc. Those are some pretty sensitive feeds. Something, your issue is that you have your data one way, they want their data a different way. Sometimes they don't even know exactly how they want it and what they want it, or they put you in touch with an IT person who doesn't know exactly how they want it, or the merchant doesn't know what they want, and the IT person. So it gets to be sometimes a little bit of a dance around to figure out what happens, and then once you're integrated, we've just had challenges with the different ones in terms of making sure that the content is updated correctly, if a price changes on our site, to make sure that the price changes on their site as well, and that if we run a sale on an item, or if we run a sale on the item on their site, that it's not showing up on our site, because sometimes they want exclusivity to things. So I think our biggest challenges were IT, and I think that only applies to a few of them, but some of the most powerful ones do want you to run through an automatic product feed. So really make sure that you have your ducks in a row on the technology side before getting ramped up.
I'd actually, when it comes to how much you need to do, I'd break this up into the perpetual versus flash. For flash, I think you can almost, in most cases, run it like a regular wholesale account, obviously with added, contingencies. You need the high-res images. They obviously love that. If you have to send them samples, if they need to photograph the samples to get it up on the sale, it becomes, you're creating too much of a burden for them to do it. So from a flash sale perspective, that almost from a resource perspective, from a resource side, you really only need, it's a salesperson. It's someone who manages a customer, manages a buyer, knows how to put up events, knows how to curate the product, that makes certain products work with any of their events, and always is focused on trying to get more up with that. When it comes to the perpetual side, as I look at whether it's Overstock or the Newegg or Amazon or any of these constant feeds where you're basically running a store on someone else's website. Obviously they're getting more traffic, and what you're doing is you're buying their traffic. You're giving them the rev share for their traffic. That requires a different level. Obviously customer service is important. There's going to be returns. There's got to be someone that handles that. There's got to be someone that, if there's a tracking number upload portion of this, someone needs to be in charge. Because there's always going to be issues. Let's say the bag never got to the customer, whatever it is. It requires a certain level of hand-on organization that is more than, I'd say, the flash sale account. So and I actually think it's probably like a second route out. Once you're doing the flash sale, it's very easy to hopefully get into that. It requires just a little bit more, but from the perpetual side, I find that becomes more of a logistics and fulfillment angle of it that is 100% important, whereas on the other side, running a sale, and ideally, anyone could really run a sale, and ideally, if you have the goods in the warehouse and you're ready to run it, if you have the high-res images, great. If you don't, they'll probably buy it or not buy it, but take it and take photographs. But the perpetual side definitely requires you to run a store. It is running retail. Yes, it's not your store with your name on it, but it's a retail store. So the volume's great, the margins are great, but it is running a store.
Anybody have any specific issues that they want to talk about?
So on a perpetual site like Amazon, how do you stand out versus everybody else? Like, what is making them look for their shop for handbag? How are they connected towards your product versus something else?
So that comes into, I think, the biggest part of this presentation. I don't know if we're there yet, but I would say that in order to get there, you first have to have your setup. You first have to have the ability to ship product direct to a customer. You have to get that set up with FedEx or wherever you need. Yeah, if you have the product images, if you don't have them yet, get them good and make sure that they look good. If you all that SKU data and all that creating of the templates and all that busy work, that's busy work that needs to get done, and someone needs to be handling that. There's 100% a level of hands-on touching that needs to be going on before you want to stand out. Once you have that system, and once you feel comfortable being able to fulfill orders, take orders, respond to orders, answer questions on comment feeds, things like that, then it comes into, okay, now figure out what are you going to do with your product. Because I don't know, and I guess it becomes a show of hands whether or not, if you're in a non-branded private label space, if you're in a licensed space, if you have your own brand or own your own brand, all of them have different implications on how you want to stand out on a marketplace. But I think the most important part of this is making your product and making your story look different. Because in a retail store, if you run a store, you probably have about 1 minute to 2 minutes for a customer to make up their mind whether or not they're going to buy it. Online, it's like less than a second. Someone sees it, they don't like it, they don't like the color, I can't see it, I don't know if it's going to fit my cell phone, they're out. They're going to the next one. They're scrolling down, and people are scrolling down constantly. So you got to make your product and your story look amazing before you go out and actually try to get any of these buyers behind you.
Outside of that, I think Ralph can talk about some optimizations in terms of how you set up.
So one of the things, I didn't really tell you guys what I do, but I run a media agency, and part of what we do is a lot of data management. So data is complicated. It is complicated. There's a lot of things going on. One marketplace we want data with, basically if you just imagine an Excel sheet with 140 columns, that's really one of the marketplaces we work with. Wants 148 columns filled out on every single record, which is complicated. Some of them want as low as 20. So you really have to make sure that what you have as far as your product data is organized. And organized in a fashion that you can dynamically create data for a specific marketplace pretty quickly, right? Because you have an opportunity, they're not going to wait forever. If they're going to run a sale, I'll give you an example. Last week, one of our customers came to us with 3 marketplaces to integrate in 2 weeks. We're like, you guys are smoking something. But the retailers, the marketplaces woke up 2 weeks before and said, oh, we need this product line. And they all came all at the same time and kind of, slept in the office for 2 weeks. But really, that's what happens. You have to have the data structured in a certain way. Then you can slice and dice it. It's like pretty much like a recipe. You can slice and dice it in a certain way, and then give them what they need, and make sure that you conform to their specifications. One of the biggest. Go ahead.
Is it best to create like one generic template, next in C as big as possible, and then try to use that to try to upload to different websites depending on what information they require?
So it's not necessarily a CSV, but if you have your, let's say, just simple Excel sheet, right? Not CS, not comma delimited, but simple Excel sheet where you have your product name in a certain way, the brand names of your product, the UPCs, the part numbers, any specific fabric or whatever content, attributes that it has, benefits that it has, any sort of data point that you can highlight in a product is really what you want to have organized. And one of the things we're going to cover tonight is content, right? It's going to be part of this the big elephant in the room that we're going to discuss a little later. But content is really important. Images are really important because that's what consumers see, and that's that's the salesman that's going to sit in front of them and tell them what this product does, and what benefits it has, and how good it is for them. So, yes, you in the back.
Yeah, I have a question. What program would you say is like the best to use to kind of manage all your marketplaces together? Like one program?
So this question is what program can we use to
Like something
organize?
like Channel Advisor, like we use that.
Right, so there are different data aggregators, same way that a data aggregator would take all product data and aggregate it across different marketplaces. There are also aggregators that will work on the opposite side, where they'll be able to grab the order information from every marketplace, stream it into one source, one data set, and then send it over to you. So as opposed to you working with multiple marketplaces and shipping Amazon orders and eBay orders and Zulily orders and Overstock, etc., all of it comes into one source, and you're just working off of one specific order list, packing list, etc., and you're just packing away, and they'll take care of all the different ones. There's a whole bunch of them. Mercent, there's Channel Advisor, there's a whole line. Some of them are more expensive than others. Some of them want to get into your into your margin going. They take a percentage of your sales in addition to a monthly fee. Some of them don't do that. You really have to do your research on the one that fits best your business in order to make yourself, to streamline everything that you're doing. Does anyone else have any experience with the data side of marketplaces and some trouble spots that they had in the past, how they overcame them, etc.? We'd really love to hear some information.
Well, what I'm trying to do now is I'm just using eBay, downloading all the templates. They have currently 4 different templates you can download in CSV, and now I'm trying to merge them all into one massive spreadsheet that hopefully I'm going to be able to use to upload to whatever other websites will take that format. Obviously, I'm going to have to manipulate it depending on what information they want.
And what product category are you in?
Jewelry.
You're into jewelry. Is it custom or is it fine jewelry?
Fine jewelry.
Fine jewelry. So you have more restrictions. So with his specific category, let's say if you want to start going into other marketplaces, you're going to encounter some challenges, right? So you have to know this when you go into the marketplace business. Jewelry, let's say, is what Amazon would call a gated category. They don't allow everybody in just because the price point of what you're selling is high. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about shortly is about picking your product, right? So when you pick your product, keep in mind that you're picking not only a product, you're picking a price point, you're trying to pick who your consumers are, you're trying to really figure all that. The higher the price point, the harder it is to make the sale because it's not an impulse buy. If it's an impulse buy, it's usually, you can make more sales of it, but your margin might be smaller because it is an impulse buy. So there's a lot of different details that we're gonna get into as far as that's concerned. So I think we're gonna segue right into that. So how many people in this room sell, let's say, generic items? Items that you can walk into really any store and buy the same exact item. And then how many of you sell unique items, things that only you would sell, and you really can't walk into a store unless you're selling that store as a wholesaler? So of the first ones, how many of you sell generic items that are really kind of you can walk into any place and buy it? I can only see a couple of hands.
Commodities?
Commodities.
The name brands.
Name brand, right. Okay, and how many of you are in the private label space? All right, so one of the reasons why Solomon and Moshe and I wanted to do this was, we kind of see the writing on the wall, right? Amazon, by themselves, forget about everyone else, has insane amounts of money. Amazon generates about $5 billion a year in profit just in their marketplace business, just in the Seller Central business. If you look at the quarterly earnings, they're losing money. Many times you guys have seen this where they lose money on product. They actually sell the product cheaper than what you would buy it for. And that's not a mistake. It's actually done on purpose. So when I say the writing is on the wall, it comes in the category. So in the cell phone category, you see the writing on the wall. A lot of cell phone retailers are closing up because manufacturers are going direct. And that's going to continue to happen over the next 4, 5, 6 years. You're just going to see more of that. More of the brand names are going to start selling directly to consumers just because their margins are better and they're able to control who gets it and who doesn't, right? So Solomon and Moshe built their business, and they built their business on private label. This is a label that you can't really copy. You can't really, go into another store and buy it somewhere else because it's not available somewhere else. And I wanted them to speak about, how they chose their items, what made them decide on these specific items, how they chose their price point, what made them make the product stand out. Because a lot of this stuff is what's going to make you successful. It really is important to have great content and great imagery because that's what the consumers see. Content is your currency online, right? You have to have the content in order to get onto all these places. If you don't have it, I would really sit down and research each individual record of yours and see what categories they fit in for that specific marketplace. Every single marketplace has a different category structure. So with Amazon, there's something called item type keywords, which you put in the item type field that will classify your product. Where in Sears and eBay, in eBay you would have to put a category ID, and you have to go to the lowest node, which means that if you're selling socks, you might have black socks and you might have colorful socks. There's 2 different nodes. So you kind of have to know your product line, and you have to do the research on specifically that marketplace and what categories your product would fit in that marketplace. There's no simple, fast way to do it. It's got to be done manually.
I think what is very important is you want to make sure that you validate your MSRP. So what's good about places like Amazon or the perpetual sales sites is that's a great place to validate MSRP. You may not do business, but they give you the opportunity at the full MSRP, but they give you the opportunity to run promotions and really sell it at the optimal price. The flash sale sites, obviously, they look at. But what's nice about that is those are a little bit harder to find. So either temporary A and B, you know, if you could slot yourself in like a curated sale or something that's not branded. The branded ones, obviously, people see. But I would say that yes, that's a big thing. Probably the first thing people do when they found you online is they Amazon. They Google you to see if they can get it cheaper. It's the first thing I do. And if Amazon is at a higher MSRP or Amazon's at the full MSRP, you now validated that they're getting a deal. So you've convinced and pushed the sale. I think that what I generally like to use these perpetual sales sites for is to help you really do the big business on lower tier price with any of these flash sale sites. Or if you're going to do it on the perpetual site, you run it through promotion. I wouldn't go up on their site at 50% off. You're gonna hurt yourself. You're gonna hurt yourself with everyone because they're not gonna like it. It's not gonna sell for them, and it's because you're up against the whole wide world, and the flash sale site's gonna come after you. So I think yes, that's a huge concern and needs to be managed. Everyone has their own way of managing it. Depends if it's your brand or not your brand. I assume if it's not your brand and you're in the electronic business, it's very tough to go off MSRP. But if you run the brand, or if you own the brand, or if it's your licensed brand, and you have control over the MSRP pricing, always good to validate it somewhere online.
One thing I want to add here is there are online retailers who will not buy your product if it's sold on Amazon. There are some of them that require you to sell them and give them something called web exclusivity. So you can only sell to an online retailer, and that will be them, and they will be the only ones selling the product online.
For example?
For example, there is a company called Fanatics out of Florida. Football Fanatics. They also have hockey Fanatics and a whole bunch of different sports type of Fanatics. I've had people call me and ask me, what do I do? I sell Amazon 2 million, I sell them 2 million. What do I do? I got to give up one. And it's a tough choice. But, you know, the market's only going to get tougher. Target's going to probably follow suit with this, and a few others are going to probably follow suit with this because they know that Amazon is the big elephant in the room. And one of the biggest problems why they can't grow their online business, and this is one of the models that they're choosing.
So you were just talking about how about controlling your price, but you don't always have that luxury. I'm working with a company that sold some stuff, some product to Zulily. Macy's went on Macy's.com, went online, saw it right away on the flash sale, and then they dropped their price right away to lower than what Zulily was paying. And Macy's.com, they're just selling them, at a wholesale price.
That's a great example of you're in the online business of being on Macy's.com. You have no control over anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
You sold it, and there's a few people like this. I mean, if you sell to Kohl's.com or some of the big retailers, they still buy like a regular store. That's kind of how they're thinking. That's going to change eventually because it's very risky for them to carry that kind of inventory. You can't compete with the Zulilys. But no, they have the right to do that. So yes, Zulily, that is something where you don't control the price. But if you were on one of these or an Amazon or an eBay where you control the pricing, it's very important that you validate where you validate it. In that specific case, that becomes, do you take the order from Macy's.com or do you offer them drop ship and hold it in your warehouse? Who wants to do that when you have an order sitting on your desk?
Well, I think back to Rafi's point, what the best thing to do I can think of is to slice and dice your lines and make like if you can make a separate label or an offshoot label or a slightly different line that you're selling to different places. It's not so easy.
It's actually, I think it's actually easier than in most cases. Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a challenge. I think what you start doing there is you start complicating your business.
More SKUs.
More SKUs, yeah. Right. You're getting into the data that goes into that. You're now going to have to differentiate them. How do you differentiate them? Do you have to then go back to the factory and modify certain products? It becomes, you're going a slippery slope for Macy's.com's 200-piece order. So it's like, kind of like, it's a little, it's how do you want to be in the online space? Do you want to be still taking that Macy's.com order, or do you want to somehow convince Macy's.com to take your commerce out? Which is maybe not the better alternative when it comes to like market week and you want to get the order in place of the factory. But I think there's an ultimate trend that's happening in the marketplace where there's inventory risk being passed on to the vendor. And if the vendor's willing to carry that inventory risk, they have the ability to really do a lot of business with the customers that are willing to accept that inventory. So if you don't want to take that Macy's.com order or that Sears.com order or Kohl's.com order, but you want to still be on it, there's still ways to do it. It may not be as beneficial in the short term, but you are able to now build that online business, which is a lot of fun.
Moshe and Solomon, both of them have their own label. Like Moshe said, 90% of what he sells, he makes, right? Which is really good because no one can really copy what he has. And the story behind it, the story behind the product, the imagery behind the product, the content behind the product, he has full control over it. So does Solomon. So I'm going to let them speak about why they got into this, how they got into this, what made them successful, what mistakes they've made, and kind of take it from there.
To Rafi's point, you can have the logistics, you can have the customer service, you can have the IT set up, you can have the imagery, you can have the right pricing, but if you have merchandise that can be found anywhere else at the same or better price, or the merchandising is not right, you don't have the business. And to Saul's point, Saul made a point earlier that a customer online is making their decision within a second, right? If he or she likes it, she's going to buy it. Otherwise, if there's something wrong, if she has to think twice about it, you're reducing the chance of her buying that significantly. Even more so, it goes to how quick they get to a competitor. So, if you go to a shopping mall, for instance, right? You've invested time. You spent 15 or 20 minutes to get to that shopping mall. You're looking for something in particular. You go into the store. They have something there, kind of meets your price point. You may not be in love with it, but you want to buy it, right? What are your other options? You can either drive out of the store and go to another shopping mall and take another hour and time and risk to see if you can find it, or you can just buy it on the spot. So that was the typical model, is that once you have them in the store, it's much easier to sell them something. Today in the online shopping world, it's a totally different picture, because within seconds, they're doing window shopping across dozens of sites, looking at all different types of product. So if your product doesn't stand out and it's not unique in most of its aspects, it's just going to be meaningless. It's just going to be ignored and overlooked. I started my business about 8 or 9 years ago with off-price merchandise. Actually, I started on eBay. It's funny. Selling off-price merchandise to a specific category of women who are larger sized, and they had their supply and demand issues there. High demand, not enough supply in this category. Traditional retailers and wholesalers didn't, take into account this particular type of customer. So on eBay, I put this product up, and boom, it really, really did well. Took the product, put it on a website, started doing marketing on Google, and that worked even better. But at a certain point, I couldn't find enough off-price merchandise to build the business. Now, keep in mind that off-price merchandise, because of my understanding of the nuances of the swimwear marketplace, I was able to get off-price buys that not everybody could get, right? So it may be easier to get, Sony TVs or something at a discount. I'm not sure how other industries work, but in this particular industry, if you got, your Calvin Klein swimwear, you were the guy that got it that year, and nobody else got it. So even when I was doing those buys, there were some unique things about the product assortment. Couldn't grow further. But what I did was, with the off-price merchandise, I started learning about what's selling in that off-price assortment that I was buying, right? What was selling it? There were certain price points that the customer was liking, certain styles, certain sizes, certain colors, and I jumped into the details, I looked at the history, said, okay, I sold 1,000 of this, and it's black and white, it sold it from size 12 to 18. Okay, let's go make one that does the same thing, maybe even better. And that was a real key for me, a real jumping point is taking what I had, making it even better, and making sure it's exactly what the customer wanted. Took it from there, and today we have we have about 6 different private labels, each one catering to a different segment of the market. You know, whether it's a fitness type of customer, whether it's a coverage type of customer, whether it's a sexy customer. So we're curating products specifically for her. And it seems to be really working because she can't find that product anywhere else. And even the product that she does find anywhere else, mine is still uniquely identified by a specific brand, by specific prints, colors, and looks that nobody could really copy and couldn't be the same. So if I did a good job, she really likes it. She knows she can only come to me for it. The marketplaces understand that, right? Because they know that this product is not something that you can find in every store and every website. And that's been the success of it.
You sell more directly from your website direct to the customer, or
Right,
on the
so
marketplace?
I actually do more on my website, and the marketplace thing has been pretty new to me, probably about 2 to 3 years that I've really started to ramp up there, but 3/4 of my business is on the website. Saul will tell you the exact opposite. He's 3/4 on marketplaces, so maybe you can get a different spin about.
Moshe kind of built his product and is looking and went into his market, I guess, really from identifying a product that's amiss and giving it a spin and giving it a reason to be. You're more problem solution. You've identified a problem in the market, you put together a solution and made it look attractive enough so that now you were able to cater to multiple markets. I came in from a completely different standpoint. My family's in the handbag business. My father has a handbag business. And licensed brands, private label, like that. And really, for the most part, I think of myself more as a glorified salesman than a business person. But I think what I do, and I think what's an important lesson that I learned over the past couple of years is that, I think a salesman sells a product, a businessman really needs to sell an idea. And if I was going to go into the handbag business, you had to create something really different. So, kind of developed based on the resources I had in the handbag world, developed a collection that was fitting towards a customer, I believe filling a void, and went at it from an online perspective and went direct to consumer. So all of my bags are kind of classic, sophisticated, ladylike, all under $100. I started with selling on my website, but the website was really nothing. I really used this website as a place to tell my story, showcase the images, take real beautiful lifestyle images, almost make it look like you're looking at a J. Crew catalog, and then leverage that branding and that story to really build myself into a brand of a collection that, my customers, thank God, thank goodness, see as like a real almost personality that they attach to. So going from a different perspective, and you went more into like building the product and building from the product, I kind of took the product that I knew and could put together and gave it a story and a spin, which I think if I were to speak to, and judging by a lot of the hands that went up with that private label conversation or that kind of miscellaneous products or sometimes even commodities, how do you give yourself, how do you stand out in the grid? That's kind of how I thought of this. How do you stand out in that grid of handbags that you'll see in every website? Some of them are colors, and sometimes it's a little bit curated by tote, satchel, but how do I stand out? So I think it becomes, I think it's very much about not only identifying and developing or finding the right product, whereas you develop and sell 90% or make 90%, I actually, through our factories, make 100% of it. It's just giving it a story and a spin.
So, how do you mark up your goods?
I think I determine the MSRPs.
And then you try them individual, how much can I get for this?
Every item.
you base it on the marketplace.
Right.
That's what I do. I'm looking
For
always at
instance,
what
I
everyone else is
import
doing.
my own goods.
Right.
I'm playing with eBay right now, and I'm building it up the last couple of months. And I see if I can't make, if an item costs me $1,
Yeah.
and it's gonna cost me $2.50 to ship, and I can't sell it for $8.88 or $10, I'm not gonna sell it.
Right.
Either you go for the whole the full markup, or just to work on a dollar
Can
here,
I
a
ask
dollar
what's the
there.
item?
I think my hottest item today would be a yoga mat.
Okay. Hot item.
Very hot item.
Yeah, hot item. If I could think of one category that I'm not in but would be fun, the yoga business right now is booming.
It's moving, exactly.
Yes, and it's a great business to be in. The way I looked at it is I had a similar thing with bags that, if in other stores may have retailed for, I don't know, $34.99 or whatever it is. But what I've gone about it is gave it a story, given it a look, given it a feel, given it a personality. My MSRPs are generally between $50 and $100. Obviously, that gives me the room to play on where I go with margins. So Zulily and the flash sales will sell it you give them the ability to sell it at a discount. But ultimately, all these different businesses, whatever private label or whatever market or category you're in, if you don't, in this space, if you're going to develop it and if you really want to go about it right, I think it makes sense to try to give it a personality. If it's not your brand, then hard to do, but maybe you got to put a little bit of personality into it because it's their personality. But if it's your brand, it gives you the opportunity to develop the content because content sells online.
So that's what I wanted to touch on. Content is really what we wanted to make sure that you pick up on. So what is content, right? How do you define content, right? So I've seen tons of data over the last 12 years. And I can tell you that if you just put a name, just a simple one, 8-word name and like a 10-word description, you're not going to do well. Don't even bother, right? If you look at some of their listings, some of Moshe's listings or Sal's listings, they're page-full content. They don't just talk about, like Moshe doesn't talk about, swimsuit. It talks about fitting tips. It talks about washing, how to wash it. It talks about the colors. It talks about what it goes with. I mean, there's so much content that really can go into any product. And when you
Even more
give,
so, imagery is key. Even with something like a yoga mat, people maybe used to seeing it photographed on the floor, with nothing around
Yeah,
it.
I have-
If you can style it.
It's the photos I take myself. For instance, I have, let's say, 3 colors. 2 colors I had professionally done, the 3rd color was just added. I took the shot myself.
But it sells well.
It sells, but you're doing 50 to 1.
Right.
Right, so that's part of the content
Exactly,
discussion.
that I see.
Upping the unique, the perceived value of it is part of the whole story.
Lifestyle images help tremendously. A customer, especially with that 1-second window, they got to see. That's what I'm going to look like when I carry that bag.
Yeah.
Or that's what I'm going to look like when I'm doing the yoga mat. So the first thing I did, and I didn't have a big marketing budget at all, was I did a photo shoot with the product. Picked a model that I think matched the customer that I wanted to do, and went on like the what's it called, the High Line, and took pictures of a woman carrying a bag looking like $1 million to make a bag that normally would be, I don't know, an off-price brand looked like it should be Michael Kors, and that was kind of the concept.
And to that point, if I come across a design or a fabric or a print that doesn't look like it's going to photograph well, you don't buy it. It's almost like the photograph is
Yes.
the most important thing. Because really that's what's making the sale.
see at the end of the day.
Right.
That's what they're looking at.
It's funny, and also like online, this may not apply to you. Being in handbags are very emotional item. From a woman's purchasing perspective, it's very emotional. It's that in shoes. And generally, in the wholesale business, black is everyone buys a black bag, everyone sells a black bag. I have trouble selling black online. It's not the easiest sell. Colors and some sort of variety of uniqueness to the product sells. So it comes back to content. If you're selling a black purse, yeah, it's going to be tough. If you're selling a nice purse or a nice story with sequins or with laser cut or something like that, for something that you can't necessarily find by just going to Amazon and searching black bag, you have more of a story to tell.
It's very funny because the same rule applies to us is that in typical retail, swimwear, I think it's about, 3/4 or more in solids. We're the opposite. with 3/4 more prints.
Right.
Because the color contrast in the photo brings it
Makes
to
it
life.
look right.
Makes it look like something that they want to click into.
I want to know what campaign do you guys utilize the most to get your brand out there? Do you use like marketplaces, social media? Like, what are you most successful with?
We are very different in that. I would say,
Very.
yeah, we're incredible. Whereas I think Moshe does very well with, Google Ads, right? That's a great, his product is a problem solution product. It serves a marketplace, so if someone's looking for example, plus size swimwear, he is a solution. He's going to capture a certain element of that market. I'm a little bit different. I started with SEM, it doesn't really work for me. For me, I have to establish, I have to build my brand a different way. I've built it mostly through bloggers, social media, and PR. People need to feel like it's a brand that they've never seen before, but is something unique and very cool. And someone, either an influencer like a blogger, or an editor, or they saw it on television, or whatever, that establishes a brand and the value behind it. So I think it comes to what you sell. If you sell problem solution, you're not going to do well just you are going to do well just trying to identify certain keywords, doing certain SEO, SEO you should always do, but doing the right...
What's SEO stand for?
Search engine optimization. So if you do which we can talk about later, it's a little bit related to this, not so much, right? No, but I think if you're going on marketplaces, and your problem solution, it's all about making sure that you make the solution very clear in your description of the product. If you're selling an image or a brand or something that is a little bit, shoes, handbags, jewelry, something that is a lot more emotional, it's how do you establish yourself as being different and getting the word out there. I found for me it was best to do PR and social media, through Facebook, Pinterest, and things like that. And having our customers share it. Now they're doing that, you guys are doing that too, but you started it with Google Ads.
You have to realize what you're getting into when you're getting into the marketplace business. And this is the reason why we want, it's going to go private label. That customer that ends up buying from wherever doesn't really belong to you, right? All you're doing is just fulfilling an order. But they don't really belong to you unless they're going to come to your site and buy from you at one point, which you can share with them. Because let's say for Amazon, if you end up sending an email to an Amazon customer, you're actually going through Amazon servers to do it. And they'll catch it, they'll suspend the account. They've done that 1,000 times already, and they'll keep doing it for 1,000 times. They'll make that mistake. But, one of the things that you really got to understand when you're getting into the marketplace business and how to make your mark is, the reason you want to go private label is because you want to make your mark. And if you don't go private label, you never will. It'll never happen because that customer really will not know anything about you.
That customer is just as good as your competitors buying in that same product.
When you come about private label, if you don't have an outlet, you go to China, you gotta buy 5,000, 6,000. You don't have the market online right now for that. So you have to have that wholesale company as another outlet, which...
I don't think you can never walk away from that. It's hard to walk away from that wholesale outlet because obviously you're going to want to sell to, players of the world or whoever is buying the
That
merchandise.
doesn't necessarily...
But I don't think that stops you from being able to develop it just to get started. And this is how you get, and it wouldn't stop you because, we're talking, I don't know what the product is. I don't know if it's like, CZ earrings or whatever it is.
No, you need, let's say to build that private label, you've got to buy a substantial quantity.
Or you can
Right
do
price.
something in the warehouse, or you can do something to the product once it's already here to give it a private label spin. Whether it's a box, whether it's a packaging, whether it's marketing materials like product is product. And at the end of the day, we're not like selling iPhones. We're not out.
I'm looking at owning the goods at 30 cents
Right.
as opposed to $1.30.
Of course.
So
Right, but if you're owning the goods at $1.30 and calling it private label, let's say you segment a certain a batch of your goods as this is going to be my private label merchandise, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do with it. Maybe you do it in the factory, maybe they'll do it for you, maybe you'll do it in the warehouse and they'll do it for you. Whatever you're going to do to give it a private label spin, you allocate a little bit of your resources just to get started. And then if you're going to own it at $1.30, but at wholesale you're going to sell it for $4, In the marketplace, you have the ability to sell it for $19.99. So there's an opportunity to juice your business if you take the inventory risk on it and you give it the spin that it needs. Personally, because that's what I did. So I think it's building off of what you have, which obviously you have the product coming in and you have good product. You believe in it and it sells to the customer. Giving it an extra spin so that you can maybe go a different route.
I just wanted to just mention again something that you guys were talking before, because it happened to us recently, and it took us about 8 months to almost a year to fix. You start building a brand, and I sell electronic accessories. Then you have distributors who want to sell your brand also on all whether it's Amazon or whether it's eBay, whether it's this, whether it's that, and they're going to buy quantity. And you give them pricing. And then you have, if you're not on top of, like they said before, the MSRP of what you want on your item, you have a total price war, which until they finish the inventory, it took us 8 months to just cut everybody out. And if they wanted to buy quantities, we would do their own private labeling for those goods. The other issue is that if you're growing your brand, and if you're currently, like they said before, selling to the major retailers here, the first thing they do is go boom, 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 and they say, you're selling me this earphone for $350 when they're selling it for $275. You go to, and it's a great deal at $350, but people are lowballing merchandise just to make a quarter on goods. So sometimes you think, you know what, I can sell this guy $50,000, $100,000 a year, and I can make this guy $200,000 a year. But if you don't control it from the beginning, it's gonna hurt you at the end.
Two routes to go in this business, in that point of view. It comes back to the Macy's.com point. Do you take that order? Because that's a great order. You want to take that order from that guy. Obviously, you're getting lowballed. Obviously, he's going to bum you again. He's going to try to get it lower. Or do you want to develop this? And I think coming back to the writing on the wall point that Rafi made earlier, my opinion is that all of the retailers are going to go private label. They're eventually going to start to develop. We see this in Target. We see this in Kohl's. It's like all through the info. I mean, I know from the handbag world, the Walmart, the Sears. Obviously, you could sell to these places, but a lot of them are starting to go more and more direct with their own buying offices. So unless you're able to develop and build yourself into a brand or some form of story by itself where you can't get it anywhere else, yeah, you can obviously there's nothing wrong with buying 50,000 units at 10 cents and selling it for 20 cents. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a wonderful thing. It's clean. But if you're in a business and you're interested in trying to get into this online selling for more, the way I like to describe it is you're trying to get a little bit of the cash register. To get a little bit of the cash register requires a little bit of investment, whether it's the investment in the inventory when it comes to private label, whether it's the investment in the content when it comes to the lookbooks, the lifestyle shoots, whatever it is. All that stuff is a little bit of an investment, but if you're able to put your feet in on that with good product, which we all believe that we have good product because we've been doing it for a while, then you have something special. That gives us the one-on-one with the retailers. And eventually they'll come back because they want it anyway, because you built up the brand.
The route of not doing it is you're just as good as your last deal,
right,
or your last client, or whatever it is, or your last great buy. Whereas when you're developing the label, you'll find that your customers who bought the product, are very happy with it, are going to relate to the name, or relate to the brand, and hopefully end up being loyal to the brand. You can tell them other things over that end. They may end up wanting to follow you on social media. You may build something bigger than what you would think you have in your hands. That's the point.
That lifestyle image that you're trying to create, you're not creating it on Amazon or eBay, you're creating it on your own website. You can
do it for both. If you create lifestyle images, any of these guys will eat it up. They want it. If you got it, they want it. They'll ask you to make it if you don't. I haven't picked their own images, but everyone else up here.
That kind of brings us into the next point. We're going to take a Q&A at the end. I don't want to let one topic go. We're going to take a Q&A at the end because we do want to finish up for about an hour and 30. So that's kind of understanding the global picture of how this works. So when you're dealing with marketplaces, the United States is full of marketplaces. 2014 is the year of marketplaces. There's going to be another 20 that are going to pop up probably in the next 12 months or so. I know of at least 4 of them that are still hush-hush right now. So, this is going to grow. It's going to grow pretty big. Understanding the global picture of, how do you fit your product line, right? Or where does it fit into the global world? So let's just say within Amazon and eBay of the world, that's one piece, and then we have the Zulili's and everything else, which are more soft goods. So with Amazon and eBay of the world, you have your 80-20 rule. 80% of the revenue really comes from 20% of the product, right? And if you're selling part of that 20% of the product line, you're really not making much, not making margin, because there's just so much competition in that space that because it's just a large part of their volume, they're just moving so many pieces, it really becomes a penny game, right? If you're short, if you're priced by a penny better, you get the buy box. If you don't, you're not in the buy box. And you'll see prices go up and down starting from 100. I mean, I know people that they start at $100 at 9 o'clock in the morning. By 10:15, it's at $80 because they keep looking at the page every 5 minutes and adjust their price every 5 minutes. So they're using a pricer versus another competitor who's using another pricer. They're chasing themselves.
Yeah.
And the price goes from 100 down to 96 to 94
That's
to
not
90
holding the ground.
to 80 back to 100 back to 97. It just keeps going up and down all day, right? And then you have
Target bidding.
and then you have your 80% of their product that generates 20% of their sales. Amazon by themselves does close to what, 75 billion a year in sales. So that 20% of the revenue is still significant, right? And it doesn't stop there, right? Because they're very strong in certain categories and very weak in other categories. But weak is actually pretty strong for what you might be used to. But that opens the door to a whole bunch of other marketplaces that you can sell on. So the understanding the global concept is that you don't actually have to be selling the 20% of the product. You can sell the 80% of the product. You just have to be better than the other 79% selling the 80% of the product. And how do you do that? That goes back into the content, to the imagery, to everything else that you can put into the product to make it stand out better, because they will all give you exposure, right? And that exposure, again, you got less than a second to make the sale. You got that, you got that chance, don't lose it, right? So that's kind of understanding the global picture of, this is why I had it on the agenda, because really it's just that 2 minutes that makes you understand that you can build a brand that's not necessarily the part of the most selling, top selling categories on the platform, because it's still selling, and it's selling significantly. You have a question about that?
Yeah. If your content is good, and your imagery is great, but with eBay and Amazon places, if your ODRs are perfect, and you haven't built up your feedback, all this is great, but at the end of the day, your item is not at the top of the page, and that's what takes time. And that's why also sometimes it might pay for you to sell a couple thousand items at 10 cents a piece, build your feedback up, get your ODR up, and then you can go ahead and really concentrate on imagery and content, because that's when your items are actually being viewed.
So it's actually, if you're talking, she mentioned a bunch of acronyms in this, what you said. ODR stands for order defect rate on Amazon. So within Amazon and eBay, they have certain measurements that they put in place to make sure that their customers are getting the best experience possible, right? So Amazon would look at order defect rate, cancellation rate, pre-fulfill cancellation rate, time to set the tracking number, on-time delivery. They look at all these things. They give you certain metrics that you got to meet. If you don't meet these metrics, they start sending you warnings. If you don't adhere, you don't fix it, right? Because they look at a 7-day trend, a 30-day trend, and a 90-day trend. If you don't fix it, and they give you a lot of chances, because they really do give you a lot of chances, they'll just take your account down, right? So one of the things that you're talking about is order defect rate. If you have great imagery and great content, right, then order defect rate is defined as a customer is just not happy for some odd reason, right? Why are they not happy? Because maybe the expectations that you set weren't met with the product. So the content could be different, or the image could look completely different than what they actually got. So one of the things that my experience has been, let's say in the jewelry category, is one of the customers that we do business with has a huge return rate on rings, huge. We're talking about 25-30% on rings, which is unheard of in this category. And the reason is because his imagery was the ring and all the different sides of the ring and how it looks. So he decided to just take a picture, one of the pictures that he's taking, on a finger, right? And it showed the actual size of the ring relative to the finger size. And that brought his return rate significantly down, because consumers were under different expectations once they got the product.
But that's what your item description is about.
Sometimes.
Especially if you're selling diamonds, you have clarity and.
Not always. Sometimes the imagery makes it look bigger than what it actually is.
Diamond is
Or
blonde.
smaller than what it has to be. And diamonds themselves, they're just margins are tight. They're extremely tight. It might sound like a lot of money, but they're really tight.
But costume jewelry, for example, going into that place, just showing the jewelry is one thing. Showing the jewelry on someone is a whole other story. But obviously, you don't want to make it like they're getting the dress and the necklace. It is about honesty. Right, exactly. Don't even get me started. But it definitely impacts it. But the imagery, especially if you're selling online, if you do sell those 1,000 pieces, go for it. You know, no one's telling you to not take that order. But I think if you are going to try to get these marketplace accounts, ODR comes into more than just your product. It comes into your fulfillment and some of the things we talked about earlier, which are the prerequisites you need. You know, you got to have the customer service. Someone's got to upload a tracking number. You got to make sure the inventory that's up there is actually what you have. It's a lot of things that like you got to have that set up. If you don't have that set up, don't do it. If you have that set up, now figure out, okay, now I've got all these beautiful things. What do I do with them? Maybe instead of taking pictures of them on a white background, in addition, you take pictures of them in a park or hanging on a nice thing. There's other things you can do, you know, to make it special, make it alive. You've got to bring it alive.
One of the other things that you said is, you know, you can flood your orders, so you make your order defect rate smaller by just having more orders. So it's easier to make a sale when you're losing 10 cents or $1 on a piece, and you can sell 100, lose $100 and kind of wash out your order defect rate. That's just a tactic. It's not a long-term solution. So, some of the things that you heard about tonight is the different marketplaces that are available out there, depending on which product line you fit into.
If I were, the one takeaway I always have, I mean, when it comes to the data stuff, I screw that up all the time. Sorry for the language. You know, that stuff is not my strength, and what you know, that's something, and it may not be your strength. It may be something that maybe is something you need to hire and invest in. But what I think is the difference in what makes us what we do is the ability to merchandise, buy and sell it, and give it a story. That's what every businessman has to do. And I think that, or businesswoman. And I think that when it comes to the product, if you have good product, you're already in a great place. If you have to develop product and you have to develop a great product, different story. But if you're already bringing in and selling great product that you believe in, then it comes into the other intangibles that are the personality and giving it to others. Whether it's content on your own website, on other people's website, whether it's the content in the description of the product, the imagery, lifestyle imagery, the customer service experience that comes after it, all the little intangibles. If you think of all the websites or all the stores that you buy from online, and if I were to ask you why you like it, it's never about it. Sometimes it's about the product or the fit, but it's never really about that. You love the experience of it, and you love how it makes you feel. So I think that element of it is the injection of story and content that's got to go into every product, whether you're in marketplace, selling on your own website, or if you're sitting in your showroom selling to a buyer. That's what it is.
If you don't have a niche, or you don't have your story or your specialty product, it's not going to be a business. Is that what you're saying?
Have you ever heard of a website called Nasty Gal? All right, so Nasty Gal is now in the it's in the newspapers. It's everywhere. They're huge. The brand, they buy from people. They'll buy expensive jeans, obviously at wholesale, but they'll go to the Lucky brand or whatever the brand. They'll buy other people's brands. They'll make their own stuff private label, but there's a lot of stuff that they just buy in the marketplace. They're buyers. They'll never ever put the product name or the brand name on their website of when they sell it. Why? Because it's Nasty Gal brand. It's Nasty Gal product. You may get in the mail and it may not say Nasty Gal on it, but the box does, and you shop through the Nasty Gal experience. So I think it's much more about the experience and the content that is given it, rather than necessarily the brand or the
I
product.
just want to compliment Exceed for putting this panel discussion together. Thank you.